I'm not sure, you might be able to hear a rooster in the background, but I'm going to try this really quick. So, my prompt was the connection between mitosis and cancer. And mitosis is the last phase of the cell cycle. It occurs after the S phase, and it's mainly involved in the actual few steps before the splitting of the daughter cells. It kind of gets them ready for that. Prophase is the first phase. It's the separation of centrosomes, and the initiation of spindle assembly occurs. In prometaphase, the cell's nuclear envelope begins to break down, and while this is occurring, the spindle fibers attach themselves to the centromeres of sister chromatids that have started moving toward the middle of the cell. And here's a picture. It shows the little spindle fibers reaching towards the centromeres, and it's showing the forming up there. So metaphase, this is where they align in the middle, and the spindle fibers each attach to one of the centromeres from the left side and the right side. And in anaphase, they pull back towards the centrosomes, and they separate the sister chromatids, and this leads to the genetic DNA that will be in the daughter cells. Telophase is the actual splitting of it, of the genome, and the contractual ring begins to form, and it starts to slowly move down. Cytokinesis is where it fully moves down, and it almost like cuts the genome into the two daughter cells with their own DNA. And in telophase, the nuclear envelopes begin to form around this daughter cell's DNA. And here's some questions to think about as the presentation goes on. What triggers cancer cells to divide? Why do patients lose their hair and have stomach problems after they've been on chemotherapy or radiation therapy, also known as radiotherapy? How do these cells from one tumor get located in another part of the body? That's specific to malignant tumors. What factors can increase your risk of cancer? That all depends on the environment, which they'll be more specified eventually. Cancer is a cell that is abnormal or mutated due to environmental factors, but mainly processes in mitosis. Specifically in the anaphase of mitosis, when the spindle fibers are pulling the sister chromatids away from each other, sometimes there's damage to a chromosome, and when it gets to the new daughter cell, that's how the cancer cell is. Or that's how the cancer cell differentiates itself from a normal cell. But by doing this, the regulation enzymes, or not enzymes, proteins are usually there in that cell. They're not there. And so this cell has the ability to just rapidly duplicate itself through its own cell cycle without any inhibitors. And by doing this, they're spreading their abnormalities, and that's how clumps of tumors form, like benign tumors. Malignant tumors have their own forms, but they mainly spread more than clump up in one area. What causes this? John Coden proposed that lowering phosphate would actually help weaken and slow down the cancer cell's cellular cycle, so they couldn't reproduce as fast. And this is based upon his study finding that, well, research previously found that phosphate has a very big role in the cell cycle, specifically mitosis. And therefore, having a lack of phosphate would inhibit the cancer cells and cause them to be weakened and more vulnerable to attack by the cancer agents. Here's some things that can show the risk of cancer, what increases it. Chemicals. Chemicals are all around us. We breathe them in every day. there's cigarette smoke, which has been known to lead to throat cancer, lung cancer, and then there's dipping, which is common in the South, and that leads to mouth cancer. And arsenic, chloride, those are just two other chemicals that we see a lot. And then specific products of coal that we just breathe in, and then it gets lungs, throat, etc. Radiation is a more instantaneous instance of gathering these mutations, such as Chernobyl. While citizens evacuated, as soon as the power plant exploded, many still had symptoms a generation later. They would have trouble with their offspring. They would have mutations, or the women and men couldn't reproduce. Their sexual organs were damaged by the radiation from that small amount. Viruses, HPV, is the most common one. There's a few smaller ones, but mainly HPV is the one that's associated with cancer. And then genetics. You inherit it, basically. It could be recessive from a grandfather or a grandmother or anything like that, but sometimes it lays dormant until a certain age, or a certain trigger sets it off. And there's tons of things that could do that, but most of the time it's just age. It'll eventually appear as you get older. Benign tumors, they're located in the primary tumor spot, like where they began. They don't spread. They're just localized, which is why surgery is the best procedure to get rid of them. Malignant tumors, they can spread throughout the entire body. And this is due to a process called EMT. And the cells are stimulated to where they could rise up, and then they just flow on down the body. And this malignant tumors get severe when they get into the bloodstream of a person. That's when it could get access to your head, from your feet, and all kinds of sorts of things like that. Carcinomas, it's epithelial tissues. This is mainly, like, you hear a lot about sun exposure, wear sunscreen. This is the type of cancer that you would deal with that. And then endocarcinomas, they are located in the glands mainly. They're one of the most common, but they're not as talked about. Sarcomas, they're mainly in the cartilage and bones of a person. They can occur in areas that are mainly predominated by carcinoma, but they mainly stick to those areas. Then there's leukemias, and it's one of the hardest things to overcome, and it develops in the bone marrow. And this is the main treatment where bone marrow transplants are used. And then there's multiple melanoma. It has to deal with white blood cells, except this one forms in the plasma cells. It is known for producing cells that cannot properly function and cannot complete their task, which is common in most cancers. That's how the cells kind of get their own somewhat foreign body in the human body. But those are really known for that. And then here's some cancers that are mainly occur in childhood. They're very rare to see in adults, and vice versa as well. But neuroblastoma, it occurs in the nervous tissue. Retinoblastoma, retina, it occurs in the eye, even though it's very uncommon. Nephroblastoma, it takes place in the kidneys. I cannot pronounce this one, I'm going to be honest, but it occurs in soft tissues, and it's a type of sarcoma. Osteogenic sarcoma, it happens in the children's bones. So, it's similar to leukemia, but basically the child version. So, there's 4 main types of cancer therapy. Chemotherapy, which is a drug treatment that is able to cycle through the entire body and target multiple malignant tumors, and thus it being the most popular for that tumor. It has its side effects, which we will get to in a minute. But then there's radiotherapy, which is basically radiation. And cancers are very sensitive to radiation, especially like the high energy rays from x-rays. So that kills off the cancer cells. It does not kill all of them immediately. It kills the ones that it can reach. But with how fast cancer cell production is, it's a hard battle to fight using radiation. And there's also side effects from that one. Surgery, this is the most common in benign tumors, such as one like on your arm or somewhere easy to get to. These they can do them if they're deep in the body, but these are just the most common for benign tumors because they're all localized in one area, and it's very uncommon for them to reoccur if they are properly removed, unless there's genetics involved or mutations of the entire body. Bone marrow transplants, this is mainly for leukemia patients. And due to the patient receiving such large doses of this treatment, their bone marrow weakens, and they have to have surgery to replace that bone marrow to continue the treatment until they eventually defeat the cancer or they succumb to it. Alopecia is the most common, or it's the most advertised side effect of cancer. You'll see commercials where the women don't have hair and they're talking about cancer and all that. Well, it affects approximately 65% of patients. And it takes around 3 weeks for symptoms to start to show to it after starting chemotherapy. But this is due to the harsh radiation, or the harsh chemicals from that treatment. And the hair follicles are so delicate that some people do lose their hair follicles forever and they cannot grow any back, but most people can. However, their hair differs from what it used to be, and that could be texture. There's been reports of colors being different, but they recommend not to bleach it or anything like that. Don't do anything harsh to the hair after it starts growing back, or it will mess it up again. And intestinal issues are mainly due to chemotherapy and radiation. Radiation, because it affects cells in that entire area, and the stomach, like the intestines, are so sensitive, especially the inner lining of them, which is why chemotherapy has such a big play in intestinal issues. So chemotherapy, the drug is designed to target rapidly proliferating cells, and cells lining the inner intestines are rapidly reproducing. So sometimes it won't wipe all of them out, but the treatment will severely weaken those cells, and it causes diarrhea, stomach issues, and sometimes it even causes swelling. But yeah, it's a big thing. And then all these sources that I used in here, they will be in my research paper because PowerPoint did not want to work with me on copying and pasting it in here. So I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you.